Hello, welcome back to this week's panel conversation. I'm so excited I can't even say panel right. Panel conversation on Together We Feel. We are talking all things periods today. Yes, your menstrual cycle. This is something that still, after all of these years, with 51% of the population having this experience, we still have a hard time talking about this publicly. There are still so many narratives and stigmas and horrible nicknames, which we talked about before we started recording, that still exist in this space. And it's shocking to have these conversations and realize what so many women just accept as a way of life. Not knowing there's other ways of existing, there's resources, there's ways to have this experience without it taking you out for 1 week every month. And even if you have lighter periods or not as much pain, you may have PMS, and there's ways to manage that. There's just so many things that our panelists today are going to have to offer you that you may not even know about, or you need to know more about, or you have a friend that does, whatever the case may be. My hope in all of this, which is always my hope on this network, both on the F.E.E.L podcast and here in these panel conversations at Together We Feel, that we're going to continue to talk about the things that get in the way of us living our healthiest, most authentic lives without shame, embracing all of our layers and acknowledging all these pieces and portions, and getting you access to resources that are going to make that a little more tangible, a little easier, because there's all kinds of different things that impact our health and wellness. And this is a huge one that we still really need to take down stigmas and old tired narratives around. And it's not something shameful that should be talked about secretly with a code name. It is a part of our human existence. And we laugh because otherwise we'd cry, because it's so ridiculous what is still happening in this space. But I have here with me today Amy Orr, Isabella Thor, and Valencia Saint-Louis. You've met Valencia and Isabella both on our F.E.E.L podcast and on our Embracing Layers radio show that we had in 2024. And Amy's a new friend that I just met through our friends at Podmatch a couple of weeks ago, but I was like, we need to talk now. You need to be part of this panel. You're going to hear from Amy today and again in the future on our podcast and in other things that we do. But I knew she had to be part of this conversation today. Ladies, welcome to this conversation. Thank you so much for being here and for the work you do. We're going to start with Amy, and she's going to give you some background on the why and the what and the how of her work in this period space. Amy, welcome from Waterford, Ireland. We're international today, folks.
Yes. Thank you for having me. I'm so delighted to be here. So a bit about my background. I started off running a zero waste shop. Mm-hmm. I did markets and stuff like that. And one of the products that I stocked were reusable cloth pads. And then I branched into menstrual cups, period pants. And long story short, over the last 5 years, I have kind of rejigged my business, or rejigged what it is that I do, to just focus on periods and period products. Through talking with my customers and hearing everyone's stories, people just love to talk and share, which is great, because we certainly didn't start out that way. But I had some amazing conversations with women and girls about the products that I stock and how they work. A lot of them were a relatively new concept to people. And then I just decided that people should just know more about them, and people should know more about their bodies. And in the Irish school systems, certainly when I was growing up, we didn't exactly get we got the standard sex ed talk, you know, the female anatomy, the male anatomy, how it works, how sex works, what it is. But there was no in-depth information about periods or the menstrual cycle and everything that goes with it. Okay, it was literally just the female anatomy, the male anatomy. This is how they work together. This is how babies are made. You know, it was just the biology of it.
Yeah.
And so there was nothing like, there's so many women out there and so many girls and people who don't know their own bodies. So last May, I wrote a program titled Navigating Periods with Confidence. And the whole aim of the program is to basically get students to just open up the conversation. So I kind of start off by asking them and finding out what it is that they know. Obviously, different ages, you know, the older the girls are and the people are, the more they're open they are about talking about it, I suppose. So I kind of, the more conversation flows, but with the younger girls, it's very much me having to kind of like, you know, try and make it as fun as I can to help them open up a bit. So yeah, I cover absolutely everything from like the menstrual cycle to what's normal and what's not when it comes to discharge, PMS symptoms. I touch on a little bit of endometriosis. None of my students have even heard of endometriosis. I think like 2 of them may be. So yeah, that's where I'm at now. I'm working with Waterford Council here, so they've kindly sponsored some cloth padded period kits. So we are handing those out to students for free. So they contain like 4 cloth pads, and they will last for up to 5 years, and they're easily washable, and they can be rewashed again and again and reused again and again. So they'll also help bridge that period poverty gap that, you know, for such a rich country that Ireland is, period poverty and hygiene poverty is a really big issue. So that's me.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that, Amy. And I love that you're meeting them when they're young. But you said something earlier about women eager to talk about it. I think once women run into someone who's open and willing to have the conversation, they just can't wait to spout it all out, because they've been in so many places and spaces where they haven't felt free. So they've got all of this stuff stored up inside. Like, oh, this is a safe space. I can finally talk about this. And so I think that's such an important point. And you're teaching these girls now.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
It's funny when I started off with Yume, I sold everything, like bamboo toothbrushes. But I did I remember my first market that I did, I had so many people coming up talking to me and asking me questions about the cloth pads. I didn't sell any, because people had actually never seen them before. They didn't know what they were or how they worked, and they weren't really sure about them. And they were like, having to wash them, touch stuff. And it's like, okay. But then my next market, the month after, those same people came back and actually bought one to try it. And then as time went on, and as I went to more markets and then online, I got the website set up, they came back again and again to buy more. And over the last 5 years, a couple of friends have said that they just haven't used disposables in the last 5 years, you know, which is amazing. They've completely cut disposables out. Which is really nice, you know, and like the amount of money that they have the potential to save, but they are kind of like most reusable products. They can be quite costly. They are an investment, but like, I don't understand why a young person should have to choose between going without or choosing a disposable product that mightn't necessarily be great for their health and mightn't necessarily be great for the environment. Like, why do they have to choose to not be able to afford anything at all, or, you know, disposable products? There should be, like, I mean, period products in general, whether they're disposable or not, should be readily available anyway. And the fact that they're not is a bit crazy. I mean, there's toilet paper in every single public stall that you go into, you know? But like even here, you get those vending machines that you still need to pay to get a couple of pads and tampons out of, and a lot of kids wouldn't even necessarily have the money. So yeah, it's a huge issue, and not just in Ireland, I think just worldwide,
Yeah, I've talked to women worldwide. It is an issue worldwide. And I mentioned before we started recording, I've had a friend from SALT on here, which is an organization here in the US that does a lot of what you're talking about. They've got period underwear / reusable pads. They've got cups, and they have started working with high schools and schools to get those things to those girls at either a really low cost or in some cases donated. Also, college campuses are a big place where period poverty is real. These women are forking everything out just to be there, and they don't have, and the expense of, so college campuses is another place that this is apparent. So this is a huge issue. And this is, some people are going to get squeamish when I say this, but let's talk about how we've all been in a stall, in a bathroom, in a public space where we had to grab more toilet paper to stick in our pants because our period surprised us, or there wasn't access to something. We didn't have something in our purse. And so why not have something right there next to the toilet paper so we don't have to pray that we stuck a big enough wad of toilet paper in our pants to get to where we can get something. Ask a girlfriend, do you have, whatever it is. We're all laughing because every single one of us have had that experience.
That's right. That's so good.
We're not unique, but like every public toilet, every public female toilet, or like, has a sanitary waste bin.
Yeah.
Like, why don't they just have the menstrual products as well?
Right next to it.
Don't understand.
I know. Where's the disconnect here?
Bin, but like, why not supply the products as well?
Well, I'm going to say something somewhat controversial, but not really. Men designed a lot of these places, except they're not thinking about that. They should have asked women, like, does this have everything you need? Anyway, that's a conversation for another day. Thank you so much, Amy. We're going to hear more from you later because I've got other things to ask you and other things I want you to show. But Isabella, Thor, welcome so much. I'm so happy to have you here again. I always love having you with us. Talk to me about your back. You have a whole background in women's health. So this period health is just a portion of what you do. So you're going to hear from Isabella on multiple topics here on our network. But today she's going to talk about periods and how she kind of accidentally bumped into finding a way to navigate her period in a really healthy way that wasn't the focus in the beginning, but she found it and was like, oh my gosh, wait a minute. Women need to know about this.
Exactly. Before I go into it, I just want to say that you guys are in for such a treat today, because I think all of us today have such a good perspective to bring to the table. We're all bringing something very different and very needed. And I'm so happy to be here. And one of the reasons I was so happy to be here is because I'm a nutritional therapy practitioner. I started my work because I got very depressed, and while I was learning functional nutrition and medicine, and fixing that with, by the way, just nourishment mostly, like very
amazing how things. That works.
Amazing. While I was fixing that, I happened to also resolve my seriously painful periods, and like Amy here, although she didn't mention it yet. Like my periods were growing progressively worse every single month, not as in like passing out yet, but as in like you absolutely will not get up. There's no way you can get a comfortable place to lie. Like if you're on your stomach, if you're on your side, if you're on your back, there's just no comfortable place. You're always in pain, and well, the pain medication is, you just never seem to hit an upper limit on it. You always need more next month, which is not a way to live. So, long story short, I happened to resolve my painful periods by focusing on nutrition and then also solving my depression and all other problems. And so I thought, wow, this is absolutely crazy. And I had a unique perspective on this because I was blessed with having no period pain ever in my periods up until I had that crisis in my health. And so when I asked people, when it started to become painful, when I started asking people, my friends, my parents, everyone, like, is this normal? None of them would say that it's not normal. I mean, they all said this is normal, this kind of pain. So just take the pain medication and just deal with it. And so stumbling across this was extra surprising for me. I thought I'd just been lucky for a little bit, But here's the thing: you guys are all lucky. You ladies are all seriously blessed. Your body, just so you know, is not supposed to be in pain. Pain is a signal from your body that there's something missing, or a need is not being met. And in my experience as nutritional therapy practitioner with a focus on functional medicine, there's only 3 big things that can really go wrong. And it's nourishment, detoxification, or mind. Any one of those 3. And these are all big categories, and hopefully we can talk about some today. But I think the most important thing really I'd like to really just make sure we say is that painful periods are not normal. Thank you very much. And it's simple. There's like 5 steps. I've seen so many women now, and I see so many people for all sorts of problems: infertility, rheumatoid arthritis, weight loss, etc. But so I've just created a simple guide that I give every woman I know now that has all the complete steps that I went through to resolve it. Because that honestly is what most women need. They just need those 5 things back in their life so that their body can function normally. And if I may, one more thing it has to be said is that most people don't realize, and they need to hear this, that their body is expressing pain because they're missing something. So most likely 99% of us are formed perfectly. All right. All your systems work. You're a perfectly formed car, or a factory, let's say. But if you don't have enough resources to run that beautiful factory, that beautiful car, which is of course way more complicated than a car or a factory, if you don't have the resources to run it, of course you're going to have problems. Of course it's going to be messy. Of course things are going to slow down. There's going to be pain points. That's just how your body works. And over time, it's only become more and more clear to me that that's really at the root of this for most women. And again, this is 9 out of 10 women. There's always 1 out of 10 that needs extra support because maybe there's an infection, maybe there's inflammation, there's something deeper going on. However, these 2 things I'd like us to just stay strong on. Painful periods are not normal. And number 2, it's probably just something you're missing, like nourishment.
Yeah. So, thank you, Isabella. Yeah. And I appreciate your passion on that. And I think it is so interesting what we as women have accepted as normal over the years. I mean, you had the conversation with your mom, Isabella, when the painful period started. She's like, "Oh, that's normal. I can't believe that hasn't happened to you before." I'm like, why do we just take that okay, this is just what we have to do, and blah blah blah, and instead of like, wait a minute, I don't think that sounds right. I mean, my husband doesn't have to do this monthly, and I don't think my creator, whatever you believe, however you believe you're created, I don't think my creator likes him more than he likes me. So something's not working here. I mean, there's but we've just taken it at status quo, at base value, and we don't get curious or push back and like, no, wait a minute. And so because Western medicine is so predisposed to setting up to reacting instead of responding, they don't get upriver and answer the why is this happening. They respond to it, react to it downriver. It's shifting. And I love that, what Isabella, and I've talked to several holistic, and functional medicine practitioners, and I use one myself now, where let's look at the why this is happening and address that why. And if we don't know why today from this blood work, this this journal you've been keeping about your systems. Let's get more curious. And, in the meantime, yes, if you need some things to help you while you're figuring that out, but getting to that why and demanding an answer to the why instead of just we're so willing to settle because that's the script we've been given from the time we were born, the generations before us, our mothers literally telling us, this is just how it goes. And it's like, really?
I'd also add that in medicine, which is fascinating, in medicine, we already have a really good foundation for this. For women, we have a few vital signs of health. And one of our vital signs is our period. And how well it's going, how regular it is, and of course, if it's even happening. Because of course, malnutrition, extreme stress, and more things than that can halt our periods, and that is not a good thing. That is another sign,
Yeah.
So, and I don't even know if we'll touch on the birth control pill, but even if we don't, we know we have a long way to go here, and we women who are entering the health fields now way more. Our mothers already entered the health field, and our aunts, and so on. But right now, we have mostly accepted most of the assumptions that men have made about female bodies, and now we're slowly realizing what boundaries we can push. And the good news is that we have a good foundation, and that is that we have that vital sign. And most women don't even know about that. So
yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up. That's Valencia is like, yes. She can't wait to talk
right? Yeah, I'm like cueing Valencia.
Exactly. That's perfectly naturally, organically setting up and cueing Valencia. But I think it's so important, that vital sign piece. And I want to say something real quick, and then Valencia, you're on. I ran track from the time I was 12 through junior college, and then I continued to run until my early 40s, and my hips were just like, pounding the pavement may not be your best form of exercise anymore. We're kind of feeling that. Anyway, but it was an accepted normality, and I didn't suffer from this, but my best friend did, that if you were a runner in a lot of deep training, really, really logging a lot of miles, or you were just a very physically active, high level training. Because I had friends that were in other sports that ran into this too, that played at a high level, played in college, some of them D1 college, very high level. It was just accepted that you might miss a period here and there. And it was, it's just because you're so physically active. And if you go more than 3 months, let's talk about it. But it was just accepted rather than okay, maybe I'm pushing too hard, or maybe there's something I'm not giving my body to fill it. But it is not, it wasn't, they didn't call it normal, but they weren't surprised and said, it should bounce back, kind of thing. And it was just that was just part of the conversation. So again, getting back to, this is a vital sign.
Crazy.
And if it is, it is crazy. And yet we all just went, oh, okay, I might miss a period here and there, or gosh, I went 3 months. It's probably because I'm training so hard, and just accepted that. Just I'm really concerned. I think maybe
honestly, not much has changed in my experience. When I grew up, I was very into dancing, loved it. But all the ballet teachers and all those, they knew. They didn't even know that it wasn't normal. So,
yeah. It's a high level training, and there's something missing when we're pushing our bodies to that brink that we're not getting, or we're just pushing our bodies too hard. I think it's both and. But so interesting.
Both and, that's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, Valencia Saint-Louis, you are up.
Yes. So I just want to say, this already is a phenomenal conversation. I am snapping my fingers, nodding my head. Very happy to be here, because this is definitely my jam. And I want to say too that it's important that we're all here having this conversation, because it is through sharing our experiences, right? Sharing the things that we've learned, that women can even become attuned to these things in their lives, right? it's even when we've acknowledged, for example, past generations, right? What our mothers and grandmothers knew or had to do. It's very empowering. And I almost want to say it's almost like a beautiful luxury that we get to really dive into these topics now, right? From a grounded place of wanting to take care of ourselves. So I wanted to start with that and say that I really am excited for this conversation. I'll tell you a little bit about what I do, but I kind of want to back up to even how I started to get into this whole periods and menstrual cycle world, where for myself, I was experiencing some really interesting symptoms, PMS symptoms, just things that, I couldn't understand, really bad cramps, really the whole gambit of things. On top of the fact that it's funny, Isabella, you brought up birth control, right? On top of the fact that I was curious about, and for a short time took birth control, right? And it was as I was navigating.
Well, I want to stop you for a minute. That's an automatic response to doctors when you're 16 or 17 years old. If your period's irregular, we'll give you the birth control pill. They tried it with my daughters, and I was like, no, you're not doing that. We're not doing that.
The answer for anything problematic.
Yes, and with no conversation.
Irregular periods, PMS.
Yes.
I don't know how they expected to manage PMS, because everyone I know, it just makes them worse.
Yeah. Because it's hormone based, and what it does to your hormones down the road and fertility and all that stuff. So anyway, yes, we got back to it.
This is perfect. No, this is perfect because it genuinely, I'm going to show you right now, that inserts into my story beautifully, right? So I was searching up different things about my body. I had started using a period tracker app, what have you. And I stumbled across this book. It was about birth control, right? And I started to learn different things about my cycle through this book that I thought, okay, I've never heard any of this before, right? Similar to, I believe that Amy had said it, when you're in middle school or fifth grade or what have you, they give you the 2D, right, drawings of this is the female anatomy, this is the male anatomy, maybe here's a pad, and that's it, right? But no real knowledge about your cycles, your periods, all of those things. And so from there, I became very curious. I started reading a lot of different books, trying a lot of different things. I did heal a lot of my symptoms, which I was really happy about. But more so, I started to get inspired to share this with other women. Because I said, okay, if I didn't know, I know for sure that my best friend didn't know, my family members didn't know, my community members didn't know. And so where I wanted to connect with what Melissa just said about birth control is actually have a story right before I had started F.E.E.L, which is my brand, where I was working with someone, this is more casually, right? Just giving them the information that I knew. And she told me, well, I haven't had my periods for months now, for many, many months now. I went to my doctor, my OBGYN, and of course, as we know, they prescribed the birth control pill, right? And that was it. No other conversation. That was it. Take this, all will be well, right? And in her case, she didn't want to take the pill, right? There were certain reservations she had about it. And I said to her, okay, well, let's try this out, right? Let's try out some of the things that I know, some of the things that I've been working on. Let's see if it makes any kind of difference for you. If it doesn't, head back to the doctor, right? Of course, never forego, right? Medical help. Go back to the doctor, see if there's another way. Within a month or a month and a half of us working together, she got her period back, and her periods were regular, which never happened for her before, right? But she had regular cycles, I mean. So from that moment, I said, okay, I know this may not be everyone's experience, but the fact that I saw this in real time, okay, drop everything.
It's not just me. I love that feeling. Feeling.
And so that really led to my journey of creating F.E.E.L, right? Where I created a website, an Instagram, right, to share some of the knowledge that I was understanding and experiencing in real time. I also became a certified menstrual cycle coach and women's wellness mentor as well. And so my big thing, right, something that I'm very, very passionate about, is I help women flow in sync with the lives that they want by tuning into their body's natural rhythms, right? Teaching them how to do that and teaching them how to, with that natural guidance, see how they can better take care of themselves, right? And align with what works for them. And so this involves us talking about things like periods, right? Hormonal fluctuations, even different phases of our womanhood as well, right, that we go through. This involves creating a safe space, right, for me and my clients to discover what is your body actually telling you, right? At that bare basis, when it's you and your body, what are you experiencing, right? How can you track that? How can you have a conversation with that, if you want to call it that too? And through that, of course, we dive into that inner guidance, but we also help them create healthy habits and choices that support the kind of life that they want to live, right? So practically speaking, that's co-creating wellness plans together, right? Navigating different challenges that may come up for them in a holistic way. So that could be, for example, Isabella, I know you mentioned the mental piece, right? That's something that often I'm working with clients to uncover as well. And just different exercises, right? Meant to help them dive deeper. Now, the women that I see, they're all of reproductive age, but we all have different things that we're navigating, right? If it's irregular cycles, like I mentioned before, if it's you have regular cycles, but you hate your period, right? You hate the PMS that you may have. Even your relationship to your period, how you see period is a big thing that I work with women on, or just a whole gamut of things, right? But at the root of it, as I'm working with women on how we can function and be well, as there's so much that's fluctuating within us and outside of us, right? I'm really about creating intentional, accessible, holistic coaching for my clients. So I think that is really the best way that we'll get to know ourselves, right? Our bodies and the things that work for us is when we can be intentional, know what we have access to, take our bodies, our lifestyles, right, as a whole, instead of kind of just segmenting them and trying to work that way. In short, to wrap it up, I really just like to say that I open the door for women to re-meet themselves and their bodies as a trusted friend and ally.
Yes, that last piece, the trusted friend and ally, a trust, because we're taught as little girls or very early on that we are not to trust our bodies.
Yeah.
That, that we got to fight our bodies and pain is bad and it means our body's failing. It's like, no, these are, and Isabella hit this, these are clues. These are things she's crying out for help. She's asking us to pay attention. And if we can switch that way, but also the narrative around periods, we know from the earliest age I can remember that period is something to tolerate. And it's this thing we have to put up with instead of it opening the door to this avenue in life. And Valencia, talk about real quick too, you're able to help people understand how their cycle is not just the period, it's the whole month. And you're able to help them identify, you might have more energy this week. So you might be able to really this might be your week to really go after that big project. Yeah. Or you might be more contemplative this week. You might need more rest. Here you might need more movement. And even if you can't, so many of us have jobs we've got to show up to every day. But even knowing that about yourself helps inform, okay, this is where I'm at in my cycle. So I'm going to have to prepare differently for this really intense meeting today because I'm not in my high energy phase. Or whatever it is, it just gives you this whole roadmap to navigate it monthly in such an intentional way. And it actually becomes an ally and a superpower.
Yes.
Because you're able to meet your life where your body is and to show up intentionally accordingly. Did I recapture that correctly, Valencia?
Beautiful.
It instills confidence for women to advocate for themselves as well, especially when they go visit their consultant GP. There's a lot of medical gaslighting out there. So, no one knows your body better than you do. So, I think a lot of women, confidence levels and confidence in ourselves and our bodies and knowing that something's not right and asking for help. We have a long way to go.
Yeah.
Part of that was what we've learned as we've grown up, what we've been told. society. I mean, the fact that women weren't included in medical trials for painkillers until the 90s.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just mad to think of. But yeah, it's no real surprise. So I think what Valencia does is amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So badly needed.
And I bet that I'm sure if you even opened your work to women who are also gone through menopause and now are in the next stage, I am almost certain that all the things that you do with those before menopause apply very, very much past menopause, because those cycles are absolutely, they continue. This is something I need to say it out loud so that people know. Your sex hormones as a woman continue being produced by your adrenal glands, most of them. So, of course, they slightly shift a little bit, and you can still track your cycle by following the phases of the moon. So if you think full moon, that's when you're like that's the ovulation, and when a new moon, you can think of it as, that's where I would be menstruating right now. So just know that anybody here who just thinks your body shuts off, it doesn't. And these hormones are still having a very huge effect on how you feel every single day, every single month. And don't believe them when they say that those hormones, you have to be on hormonal therapy, okay, to be able to feel good again, like before you went through menopause. That's not true. Second thing I'll say, because I can't help it, most problems with hormones and how you feel past menopause come from exhaustion. Your adrenal glands handle most of your stress and most of your hormone production past menopause, right? So they have an extra burden now. Now, if you're already stressed out, like many, many women, we've talked about this now, all of us now, mindset is huge. This is why it's one of our pillars between all of us. We understand that mindset is the key, and it's because it literally has a direct cause on how your body deals with stress. So lower your tolerance to stress, ladies. I think that's the best advice I've ever gotten myself.
Yeah.
And it's
100%.
really important.
I think stress is one of the biggest culprits when it comes to like your health in general, but especially your cycle. Like it's just not worth it. And I think it's something that, again, a lot of us, male, female, grown-ups, kids, we're not taught to manage it. You know, we're in such the world today is so busy. Everyone's so busy all the time. And the grind is seen as like the go-to for everyday living. And
we wear it like a badge of honor.
Yeah. The stretch just goes hand in hand. And slowing down and relaxing and taking a nap in the middle of the day, if you in the middle of the day, is seen as taboo, you know?
Yeah.
You know what?
Amy, I just have to insert this right here, because everything that we are saying, you know, I've worked with women who, for example, even when it comes to the whole cycle syncing piece, right? They want to know, okay, how can I really optimize? How can I, you know, push myself to be more productive, to do this, to do that within the context of my cycle? And sometimes I have to just tell them, hey, part of understanding your cycle, right, and valuing it is valuing rest, is valuing those times when you're not 100% up here, bubbly, outgoing, talking to everybody, right? I think that part of what can seem difficult maybe sometimes in our Western, very busy world is valuing those more, I want to say, inactive, so not really inactive, but inactive times. Yeah, right, exactly.
Still.
Non-stillness.
Yes, exactly. Moments of stillness.
Non-capitalistic productivity.
Yes.
Melissa's sold. She's so sold on this.
But it's often true though, right? And if we can't give ourselves permission to even see the value of rest, to see the value of, when I'm not producing in this way, am I still valuable? When I'm not this super outgoing, bubbly, agreeable, estrogen filled, right? Like, am I still valuable? Right.
Yeah.
And these are some of the conversations that I have with women.
It's taken me a long time to accept that it's okay to slow down. When my son he'll be 10 in March now, but when he was born, I got out of the hospital, and like that very day, we left him with my mom, and myself and my husband went into town to rent a pump because I was expressing, but like I was just up and out the door instantly. And because he was like 2 weeks late, my husband's family from Spain came over. And obviously the baby would have been 2 weeks old if he'd arrived on time, but they had arrived the day that I got out of hospital, and we spent the entire weekend like doing lunch and spending time with them. And I had to actually leave lunch and go out and nap in the car because I was so exhausted. So I left the baby with him and his family in the restaurant, and I actually went and I lay down in the back seat of the car. I don't know how long I napped for, but I actually just could not function anymore. I couldn't even like get words out. And then when my daughter was born 2 years later, I was like, I'm not doing that again. I'm not doing that again. And I really took it easy. But it's only now, like everyone is like, nap when the baby naps. I'm like, you can't do that because there's so much to do. But, and I was so worried about the house being a mess and the laundry when my son was small, and I had to do it all. But, you know, when my daughter was born, I had a toddler and a newborn, and I was like, no, I don't care if my house is a mess. I'm going to stop apologizing for the mess. I'm going to go nap. And I'm not guilty of that. And even now, like, as I think I'm always tired, and a lot of me thought it was because I now think that it might be because of like my underlying endometriosis. I think that's the reason why I'm so tired. So I'm in the middle of getting that investigated. So, but I used to feel so bad about it. I'm like, why am I so tired? Come 3 o'clock, I would like hit a wall and I wouldn't be able to do anything else. And I used to feel really bad about myself and really lazy, especially running your own business, being self-employed. You're doing everything, and you feel like if you're not working, you're not earning money. You know,
look at that. That's what we like Amy. You touched on so many things, right? Whether it be being a business owner, being a mom, right? Just showing up in life as a woman. It's always this idea of, okay, maybe I'm not doing enough, or maybe I need to push past this. I need to whatever. Never sitting down to really ask, why is this the case, right? We talked about pain before, right? And we talked about, okay, periods are not supposed to be painful. In every other instance, for every other person, whenever they're experiencing pain of any kind, we know, okay, wait, let me stop. Let me maybe let me go to my physician. Maybe let me get help as well. I think that's a really big key thing that I think women can really sink into, is using your support system, right? Because that's how we address and deal with and dissipate that pain that we experience. Right. So I hear you fully, Amy, when you're saying all this.
And I want to jump in and say, and Valencia knows this is why we started this network. This grind we're talking about is the very reason I started this. And I called Valencia in March of 2021 and said, what do you think of doing this with me? Because of this very, like, instead of seeing our cycles as this is time to rest and refill. And when I rest and refill, I show up vibrant and healthy and well, first for myself, because my value is not based on how much I produce. My value is based on my intrinsic value as a human, which is why we introduce guests by their character traits on the F.E.E.L podcast, is we want to hit home that is who you are, not all these roles and titles and things you produce and do. But for some reason, even though our bodies were created to be in this cycle, to make time for high energy and time to rest and recoup, we have not accepted that as humans, and we fought against it instead and pushed our bodies past the brink all the time. And then we wonder why we're irritable, sad, depressed, anxious,
resentful.
We feel like a martyr. No one appreciates us. And it's because we've set up this system that is set up to fail. It's a setup to fail for women. And we cannot win going about it this way. We have to pay attention to our body, the signals she's sending us, give her the rest and rejuvenation. Because guess what, patriarchy? Everybody wins when women see themselves as worthy and valuable of the time to invest in. We show up healthier, fresher, more ideas, wanting to be there. We identify those areas that we feel passion for, that our values are aligned to, and you get the best of us every time we show up because we have taken the time to care for this vessel and listen to her. I know I got really excited there, but it's like, my God, this is it. This is it here.
I want to add one more thing to what you're saying too, because this, like you're saying too, kind of this devaluing, I would say, of the cycle, of the different ebbs and flows that we have. It's so interesting that we don't acknowledge that every single human being, right, even Earth itself, we go through different cycles.
Yes. Seasons, cycles.
Exact seasons, right? I like to share that a lot too. The seasons and the cycle phases. If it's even looking at our 24-hour circadian rhythm, right? Which every male and female, right? Everybody, anyone, however you identify, we all are governed by, right?
Yeah.
And with that, there is a season for rest, right? Your body knows, okay, I'm tapped out, right? If it's 10 p.m. at night, it's time to go to sleep, right? Yeah. And then there's a season for you to wake up and have energy to do this. Everyone is governed by these things, but for some reason, it feels that there's a devaluing of that when it comes to women's, particular the infradian rhythm, when it comes to our menstrual cycles, all of that. There's a devaluing of that.
And depending on your faith, even God rested on the seventh day. Right?
Yes.
I recently heard that, and I'm like,
Exactly.
Had a little rest for himself.
Yes.
Love that for him.
Yes, and why in the world have we not? But we have built this system that fights against what our body was created to live by, go by.
Speaking of something that is helpful for this, because I think we really got the philosophy of it. We got how ridiculous we're acting compared to the natural world. But so a lot of people are very surprised when they come for help with me in functional medicine that I address their mind as a part of the whole thing. And one of the things I do is address their stress. And one of the things I start with often is to ask them, how do you feel when I say this? There will always be more work to be done. How do you feel? And they look at me very often. They look at me like, and they get tenser. And I'm like, when the way you know that you really understand that sentence is how your shoulders drop, you sit back in your chair, all your muscles melt, and that tension in your head and in your heart lowers a bit. That's actually when you know you understood what I just said. And often that's where I start the conversation on stress. And many, many people, then I ask them, so did you get relaxed when you heard that for the first time? And most of them were like, no, not at all. I had to consciously be like, well, I get this. I'm smart. I'll relax now. Anyway, so that's the first part. And then the second part, I absolutely say is a non-negotiable is you have to have a simple breathing practice, not a meditation. You just have to have like a habit of breathing as soon as you notice a few things. Overwhelm, rush, stress is like a more general one, but the two, rush and overwhelm, are the biggest ones, especially for women. So whenever you see it, and this will take a while, so please be patient with yourself. You're like a kid learning to walk, okay? Now, what you do is you just make sure you breathe in for at least 5 seconds, and you breathe out for at least longer than you breathed in. That's all you got to do. Breathe through whatever hole you want, but I prefer the nose. And it helps scientifically. But honestly, just keep it simple. Do it 3 times sincerely and try to do it sitting down, and you'll notice huge shifts over time. I work with so many people that are busy, and I get it. And they're not willing to let go of the busy badge yet, until they get a taste of what it's like to just say, I don't give up what you think if I'm going to be at home on Saturday. yeah, exactly. The subtle art of not giving up, And so I think that's something that's so important. And the last thing I'd say on this is that hand on my heart, I have seen so many clients that haven't had an inch of progress on their health because they let stress rule their life.
Yeah.
I swear to you, we're doing everything. And it's because, and people don't understand this either. They need to know this. Stress is expensive. And to hit it home, your body spends currency on everything it does to make you feel good, to have a baby, to be creative at work. It spends energy on all those things. It uses nutrients as currency, calories, etc. Now, if you let yourself be ruled by stress, instead of taking 100% responsibility over your life and your priorities, then everything your body will spend will be under this massive inflation. Massive. And we all understand how painful inflation is, right? So just think of it like, do I really want to spend inflated nutrient? Like, do I have to spend on this inflated price? Do I really want to do that right now? And I think that gets people's attention. So yeah, these 3 things are for sure what I make sure we hit home. And I think then people start to try to dabble with relaxing, and it really helps.
Well, you gave them something tangible they can do. It's like, oh, I can do that. That, I think that's the key point to that. I want to shift gears a little bit here because we're getting close on time, and I want to make sure we hit this. The conversations we're having about this, and Amy's doing this work with young girls, but we've got to get to a point where we're doing this work with young boys. And my friend Taylor Moore, who I've had on before, she works at SALT, and she talks about how she and her husband talk openly about her cycle, about her periods. Her husband talks to other friends of theirs, other husbands, about the work she does with SALT, about how it affects women's periods. And they're like, why are you talking about periods, bro? And he's like, because it's a part of life, and we should know how our wives' cycles work, and we should know what's available to them. And we should know as husbands with daughters and fathers.
And don't you want to know when a rose will make her the most happy?
Exactly. No kidding.
No, don't do it. Don't do it.
Yeah.
Having the boys that I've had in my talks, I kind of do like the first half of the talk, they're in the room, and then the second half is more kind of like how to use a tampon, how to insert a tampon, stuff like that. So they don't necessarily need to be there for that, but
sure. And the girls would never talk about it in front of the boys.
No. But the boys are like, oh, why are we here? We don't need to know this. I'm like, most gynecologists that I know are male. I'm like, so you kind of do have to know this kind of thing. Like, even just so you don't look stupid, you know?
Yeah.
Nice. I like it.
There's like there's a YouTube video going around before the US election, and this woman was asking questions about to men, like, how many tampons can a woman pee with a tampon in? And most of them were like, oh no, you have to take it out. It's like,
not the
these are
same
grown men. Like, my son is 10, he knows this. You know, because like that, I'm quite open. You know, I'm like, Mommy's,
good boy.
he has a sore tummy today. Mommy's tired. I'm going to go for a nap. Don't hide it. You know, when they burst into you, in on you when you're in the bathroom, you're like, there's no point in lying to them. You know, it's like, well, you know, you bursted in here, so you're going to see what you're going to see. I'm not going to.
Yeah, not apologizing for that.
From it. You know, next time, just give me a bit of privacy. If you don't want to see it. But this is what it is, in case you're wondering.
Yeah.
You know,
but even just that, I mean, that's just like, you're doing him such a service. And if he decides to partner with a woman down the road, yes. So let's talk about that for a minute. Let's stay there for a minute. So one, we got to get boys involved on this education early to take the stigmas off it, to take the horrible nicknames off of it that many times men will use in a very cheekish, disrespectful way because they aren't properly educated about this. But also these things, like, and I talked about this before we started recording. I'm like, I grew up in mostly the 80s. I mean, I was in elementary school in the 70s and I graduated high school 88. I was an 80s girl. It was routinely called, oh, she's on the rag. That is just disgusting. For one, I was like, well, no, she's having her period this week. I mean, people say period and they react the same way as if you said penis in the hallway. I mean, it's just like all body parts. Nothing's gross. Nothing's scary. Let's just talk about it. But no. So that opened a conversation into, so tell people what in Ireland it's called.
Oh, well, there's loads of things. We use on the rag as well. There's Aunt Flo has come into town. What else did I mention earlier?
That's pretty groovy, actually.
Aunt Flo. I'm trying to think what else.
The Things? Was it The Things?
That was it. So like, I didn't start my period till I was 15. So remember, I was in school with a girl one day and she was like, oh, I've got my things. And I was like, I had no idea what she was talking about. I'm like, okay, not feeling very well today. I'm like, things. I had no clue what she was talking about.
Which things might be we referring to?
Right. It could be anything at this point.
So many things.
So many things cause me pain. And then so I made a TikTok video and I was like, what I'd love to hear, like, from people in different countries, what you've heard or what you refer to, alternative sayings. And one woman was like, in Germany, we say that the communists have entered the building.
That was kind of my favorite. I mean, I know we're trying to keep the stigma off of it, but the thought behind it is pretty clever.
Yeah, Isabella, your husband's Chinese?
Yes, he was born there, and we have no love for the communists. But that is he would love that. And in China, I believe it's red aunt or big aunt, dai in Chinese, and I felt like that was a little more.
That's nice.
I don't know. It just felt a little okay. It felt okay,
a little less slangy.
But we are totally missing the naughty, flowy, gorgeous, voluptuous thing it is. Yes, it's a bloody mess, but what fun thing isn't? Come on. And
no kidding.
Because in the same zone, we have these incredible abilities to have orgasms, right?
Yeah.
So, and it's the gateway to life.
Yeah.
So many cultures call it that. So there's so much more, and I know we're coming close to the end of the time, but like, if any of you listening to this were fascinated, intrigued, or just a little more curious, just know that this is the tip of the frickin' iceberg. There's
Yes.
so many more fun things going on underneath. Like, when you go down this route, you'll find alternative contraception that are drug-free and completely safe and effective. You'll find the possibility of giving birth in an assisted way at home that's pleasurable. Question mark? Like, what? Most people are like, what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah, exactly.
But that's not it. And usually this pain, if you ignore it, there's huge consequences to ignoring it. So you can avoid surgeries, major hysterectomies, endometriosis, drugs. There's so much good that you can get out of this, or help other women in your life get out of this.
Yeah.
And lastly, and my most favorite thing, is if you go down this route, you can turn the pleasure and pain into pleasure.
Yeah.
So start with the pain, figure out what's going on. We all have our own resources to help. And for sure, I have a completely free guide. Start there. It helps 9 out of 10 women just fix it. Then go get a coach and figure out the rest of the cycle.
Yeah.
With Valencia. And then you can go and help other women learn the same thing, just like Amy here.
Yeah.
And this all together, when you've done that part, I really encourage you to go deeper, especially into the pleasure part, because it's not a source of pleasure. It's not only a source of discomfort or shame, it's also a source of pleasure.
Yeah.
And that's a whole other podcast.
It is.
Panel.
But I am going to touch on that. And I want, Amy, can you bring out your crochet piece? This is beautiful. And she's going to... Yes. So show us each of that. And then I have one last thing to say about that before we wrap up today.
This is the cuterus. She was crocheted by lovely ladies in Ecofem in India. And she comes with little blood droplets. Okay. And she's actually, like a lot of students are kind of their mind's blown when I'm like, this is actually more or less life size. This is the size of, for something that might give you so much pain or cause you so much aggro. It's for something that is the strongest muscle in the human body. It's actually quite small, but mighty. And then I have this little gal, the vulva. And this is actually really like, one of the very first talks I gave, I asked the students kind of just to tell me in the simplest terms what a period is. And one girl, she was about 11, she was like, a period is when you wee blood. And I was like, okay. I was like, well, you do bleed, but it doesn't come from where you think it does. So it's a really good visual for the students. So like the clitoris comes out. And then this is like the urethra, and then it has the vaginal opening, which I actually use this to show them how to insert a tampon.
That's
it's
great.
Really helpful. And even a menstrual cup fits through here, and you could just put the vagina in there. And then it even has a little butthole. So contrary to popular belief, women actually have 3 holes.
Yes.
Going back to that video before the election, a lot of men didn't realize. So you don't have to take a tampon when you.
But I mean, we're laughing about this because it's just so mind blowing. But I wanted you to show that because it breaks it down in terms they understand. It's not on a big body on the wall that feels cold and.
And that's pretty much life size as well, isn't it?
Yes. And it's tangible. And the one thing I'm going to tell you before we wrap up today, because it's connected to this part of the body, not about periods, but going back, Isabella brought up pleasure. I'm 55. I got married when I was almost 24, had 3 daughters in my 20s. And the first one was a surprise 4 months after we got married. Birth control really didn't work for me. So at that point, it was like, why am I doing this? It doesn't even work anyway. Anyway, but at the ripe old age of 31, with 3 children under the age of 6, I learned what a clitoris was. No one told me ever. that women, only women, men don't have this because they don't need it because they've got the penis, but women also have an organ specifically designed for pleasure, not connected to recreation, not connected to your period, for pleasure. And that will be a whole other topic, but this is
the least we
consequence.
deserve. Let's put it that way.
Yes, my God, no freaking kidding. But we don't honor it that way.
No.
We don't honor it. We don't give it the attention it needs, the language, your little crochet piece there gives a full understanding to girls in a very
Melissa
way. Go ahead.
Was it? It wasn't until 2006 that the clitoris was actually included in medical journals.
Well, that's about 3 years after I found out a clitoris was. I mean, I think it was literally, I'm not even joking. It was like 2001 or 2002.
Melissa took them off.
And I'm just like, I was like, wait a minute.
It's no wonder men can find it, you know? I mean, it wasn't in their medical journals. So, like, you know, they have no excuse.
No.
There now, black and white, print.
Well, think about the difference in how we would approach period health if we had a full understanding of its purpose and what comes out of that time of your life. Oh, now that you have a period, you can't just make babies. You also have this organ designed for pleasure and connection, and that is good. That brings up all these good hormones and is a way to connect with another human in such an impactful and meaningful way. And hey, you get to feel good too, not just the man. What if we approached it that way, wherever I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I get to feel good too. I'm not just here to make sure the man is pleasured. That changes and the man knows that too. And the man
talk about the requirement to relax, didn't we?
Yes.
We give so many examples, and the most naughty thing we can come up with is candlelight and bathtub. But that's not it. And like Melissa, like so many of us have just like Melissa's experience here. We only know the tip. Most of us didn't even know about the clitoris. But then once we start to uncover the layers, which we are doing here, you go deeper. You find the vaginal ones. You find the G-spot ones. You find more all over your body.
Yeah.
So this should be written, and I hope that in Valencia's like how to relax. Like you have a super bonus. Have the orgasms by yourself and learn how to do it. It's so worth it. Yeah. It's so relaxing for the body. So many good hormones.
It's funny. You said you had no idea what the clitoris was, Melissa. I had no idea what the pelvic floor was. What my pelvic floor was until I got pregnant with my son, and I had issues with walking. So I had really bad cyst pubis and pelvic girdle pain, and I went to a women's health physio. And she told me all about my pelvic floor, and men have one too. But I guarantee the amount of women that don't realize it exists, the amount of people that don't realize it exists, and the fact that it supports every single internal organ in your body, like your reproductive organs, you know, your bladder, your bowel, your diaphragm, all your internal organs, it's all connected, and the pelvic floor supports all of them. It's here at the bottom holding it all up, and no one knows about it. And we certainly weren't taught that in school. And
no,
you know, when women are weeing themselves after having a baby, or they can't run anymore because they wee themselves, and they don't even know what their pelvic floor is. I could go on and on. There's just...
It's the sense of, I feel this all the time in my practice. It's the sense of people just don't know how much power they have in their own bodies without drugs, potions, or medicines. There's so much you can do. Even just the questions you ask yourself every day, huge. Instead of, why is this always happening to me? Ask, how could I, if I could get through this, how could I do it? If it was simple, how could I do it? Just that little shift, your brain focuses and will bring you answers that are useful. So again, we have so much within our own bodies. You do not need the pharmacy. You need the farm, maybe. But
yeah.
I'm driving as well right now. Yes.
Yeah. Well, and I also like that reshaping and why is this happening? So you're like, how can I respond to this? What is my body telling me?
Yeah, instead of curiosity about it.
Yes, instead of like, oh my gosh, what is happening to me?
Yes, because imagine that too. If you have a curiosity about something, right? Then you're looking at it with the lens of, okay, let me first objectively just see what's going on, right? Being able to even identify, what am I feeling? Knowing, or even, this is really important too, having the education about what are my parts named, right? Amy, you brought up that whole what are they named? Because I think
every one of us should have one of Amy's crocheted things, and we should hand them to our kids when they're like, yes.
Imagine this. You go into, let's say, your OBGYN or your general practitioner, you go to them, right? And you yourself are not able to identify where pain is in your body, what it is that you're experiencing, right? And it's almost like to help facilitate that connection, it's good when we have a shared language, right? Like, of course, we have slang, we have things that we call things, but often, we would often we're saying things like, oh, well, I'm feeling this this weird sensation in my pubic mound, for example, or actually it's really towards the bottom of, the outer lips for me, or it's, wherever it is, right? Getting specific helps somebody else help you, which I think is really, really key. And to what Isabella said too, that I wanted to tap into, is that holistic piece. It's really understanding that, first of all, you're not broken, right? You yourself as a person, you're not broken, right? And secondly, understanding that you have access to things that can help you take care of yourself and flow in sync with the life that you want, right? My little tagline.
Yes.
Right now. But right now, I think often we look towards, whether it be the medicines or even certain supplements, things of that nature, to try and fix what's going on, right? When, first of all, we're not even taking the time to sit with what's going on for us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because we've been told not to rest.
Yes, right. We have to come down to the foundational things, right? When it comes to our mental health and well-being, when it comes to our pleasure, just the simple practices, exercise, your routines, the food that you eat, how you're sleeping, these things that seem basic, and there are a lot of them honestly free. I will insert that too, that we should really understand as well. It's important to tap into those things, right? Because then you can feel more empowered and say, wow.
There's a lot to be said for 20-minute nap.
You're right, exactly. 20-minute nap.
Any
longer and you're screwed, but 20 minutes is like the perfect time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Power nap.
Anymore. But,
everybody wins when they get to be around you.
Normalize the day nap.
Yeah.
Normalize the day nap.
Just move to Spain with your husband.
I know. Like, exactly. It's like,
beautiful. Yes.
I know. Yeah.
Everything shuts down. Like, obviously, Amy knows this, but like, all the shops are closing.
They do the same thing in Italy. Italy. My husband put a sign up on the door, and they're like, "We'll be back when we are ready."
Yeah.
Just a choice.
Yeah, you will.
They're not giving you the choice to rest. It's like, no. There's nothing else for you to do. Just come back later.
Yeah.
Go rest. We're shut. We're closed. Yeah.
There's always more
work
to be done.
I love it.
Yeah. One last thing, Amy. You mentioned the pelvic floor, and then we really are going to wrap this up.
Yeah.
We are constantly, that's an example of what we're constantly reacting to because we don't know about it. So we're reacting to it after it becomes a problem instead of building it up so that it won't become a problem.
But like, men can have issues with their pelvic floor as well.
Yeah. And we just don't talk about it.
No.
Until it's a problem. I'm like,
it's funny, like Isabella was saying, like, it is possible to find pleasure from pain. like there's different types of pleasure. Obviously, when my son was born, I got the epidural, and it only worked on like one side, so I could still feel everything. And I was like, and then when it came to my daughter, I had no idea what I was doing when I went into labor with my son, first baby. Like, you've no idea what you're doing. You're going in blind. Doesn't matter how much advice you've gotten or like how many books you've read. You're never going to know until you're in it. Okay. And then with my daughter, I was with like the Domino scheme here. So it wasn't consultant led, it was midwife led. And even though I still had to go in and get induced, and I still had to be constantly monitored, the midwives like were able to, they were like, if you need to get up and walk around, you walk around. We'll follow you with the drip. You don't have to be bedbound like I was with my son. And I used the birth stool on her. So I like gravity just, and it was the most empowering thing I've ever experienced. And I would do her birth 10 times over. Like it was just an amazing, pleasurable experience. You know, obviously it was painful, but I do it time and again, like 100%.
Yeah.
You know,
thank you for sharing that.
Son's birth was just, they're just so complete polar opposites, completely different experiences.
And all based out of knowledge. Like, I think
all based out of knowledge and support.
The support from the midwives and from like a little community of midwives, and like, well, my husband knew more as well, so he was able to support me more so as well. Like there was a student doctor in the room because I said that he could come in and monitor, you know. And they bumped up the oxytocin drip, and they were like, oh, look at it. It was like 5 to 1 or so, 1 o'clock, and in the afternoon they were like, look at it this way. By dinner time you'll have a baby, you know, like 6 o'clock. And I was like, no. And I had the gas in there, and they were like,
that's 5 hours.
Oh my God. I was like, I can't do it anymore. But literally the midwife, she was like, I'm going to go get you a heat pack and I'll be back. So she literally left the room, and I was like, oh my God, like the urge to push. And I was like to my husband, I was like, get in here, like get them back here. And like the student doctor is just like, my husband was like, push the button. He was like, where's the button on the wall? And like my husband was just like, and there's like this massive alarm going off in the labor ward. It's so dramatic. But like the midwives came back in, they're like, oh my God, okay, you ready to push? I'm like, oh my God. So it was it was like such a like complete different experience. Even like, you know, Ross completely kept his cool when I was like, oh my God, I really need to push. And he was like, I was like, get the midwife. And he was like, okay. But yeah, he was like really cool. Whereas with Finn, it was just kind of like, it was completely different.
But he was informed, and he knew how to support you. I mean, that changes everything in the dynamic. And I know we've gotten up, people are listening, like, I thought that was about periods. It's all connected, people. I think that's the important thing. That, you know, I mean, we can bring up Amy's, you know, diagram again, you know, crochet diagram again. It's all connected, but it starts with having conversations with our little girls and our little boys about periods and changing the narrative so those little boys can ask questions too. And they're able to better support their partners later on in life when they're going through these other things. Whether it's how to pleasure their partner and ask the right questions to ask, whether it's how to support them in labor and what's most meaningful to them. Everyone wins when we have this knowledge. So we've got to take this stigma and fear. And it, you know, even my husband, who is a very current, he's a wonderful girl dad, 3 daughters, grew up with a very empowering mom who was a woman before her time. There were no gender roles in that family growing up in the 70s and 80s, which was highly unusual for that era. And even he had to be told by our daughters. I was out of town one time, so he hates this story, but it's qualifies here as we wrap up. I was out of town. I was taking our oldest back to college to help her move in. And so he was home with our other 2 daughters. Our youngest started her period. She needed some stuff from the store. This was before this was 10 years ago. We didn't have a lot of the stuff that we know about now with period cups and everything. And so Kylie comes down, our middle daughter comes down. He's like, hey, Dad, you need to run to the store to get Courtney some pads or whatever. And he's like, well, I'll give you the keys and some money. And can you go do it? And she's like, no, you're her dad. I got homework. Go to the store. And he's like, well, what do I get? She's like, you've been in this house with us people have been having periods now. Oh, you've been with Mom for multiple years. You know what she gets. You know what to get. I mean, it was hilarious how our middle daughter was like, no, do it, man. And he even says to this day, he's like, Kylie was having none of it. She's like, I'm not doing that for you. You're the parent here. Get to the store. But even he, who grew up in this environment that should have been, that was very empowering in so many ways, even within that, there were still those stigmas about periods and men's and dads and boys' relationships to them. And so changing, so how we talk about these things from a very early age, before you're even thinking about it, parents, matters. How you talk about it with the WOM in the family, around the little 100%. Boys.
I think even just the way, like, dads are so much, like, a lot of young dads are more hands-on now than than my dad's generation were. It is changing slowly but surely, but I like empowerment comes from education, you know. I think education is just one. It's like the most important thing. It's the most important thing. It's like the basic,
Well, how we introduce it, like you introduce it in such a, like, I keep going back to this diagram, but it's such a tangible way to meet these kids where they are. Yeah. And it's very so basic.
And it gives them giggles.
Exactly.
I'm like, this is you. This is like everybody. This is you. It might look different. It might be like different shape, different sizes, different colors, but we all have one here. Except boys. But it's I think it's, and the fact that it's like the uterus blows their minds. And I'm like, this is the size of it. It's the size of your fist. Like,
having access to something like that, right? Having access to a workshop like that, or even some of the services that Isabella and I do, that is part of the education piece, right?
Yes.
Because as we know, as of right now, this isn't in schools. This isn't in a workplace, right? This isn't somewhere where we just readily get information and education on our day-to-day walks. And so I think that it's in part making sure people have access to this kind of information, but also that we encourage people to seek out this information in general too, right? Like the valuing of it and knowing that it's accessible, I think is another big thing that I always hit on too. Because it's only when we have these pieces that we're all talking about that you can get to know your body better, right? Address pain, bring it to pleasure. You can advocate for yourself in health spaces. Like there's so much that comes out of just something as simple as getting educated about these things.
Yeah.
Yes. And
I'd want to add something
real quick before you do that. Yeah. Not learning when you were younger is not an excuse for not learning when you're older. I want to add that to what Valencia said.
It's never too late to ask questions.
Exactly. Isabella, go ahead.
That's sometimes
it is so admiring when somebody old says, "Oh, what's that? I don't know. I don't understand." Honestly, I admire them. I'm like, wow, you don't know everything.
Yes.
Still ask what?
You're staying curious and acknowledging you can still learn.
My dad was visiting one day and I was boiling my menstrual cup and he was like, "Oh, what's that?" I was like, "That's my menstrual cup." He was like, "Oh, right. Okay.
All right."
End of discussion.
Any other questions?
That was the perfect reaction, by the way.
Sorry.
Something I just think is very practical for most people when it comes to education and information. Most of us have access to it all. Okay. And the reason we don't take action is because, one, we don't believe in ourselves. Number two, we don't believe that in the results, that we will get results.
Mm-hmm.
And number 3, there's some resistance. And I think for the third one, at the very least, I just encourage you guys to think about, well, everybody that's listening really, to think about this phrase. It's well known across many cultures, and it goes something like this. What you most resist is usually where you need to look. And what you need the most is usually the thing that you resist the most. Something like that. So if you feel resistant to it, if you feel the yuck, or even anger, sometimes people can feel angry and betrayed. If that's the case, that might be the best news ever, because that's, again, it's just data telling you this might be the best thing you've ever had in your life happen, and it will give you so much back if you look into it. Don't keep it hidden like a wound that's festering in the dark. Bring it out to the light. You'll get so much from it.
Figure out what's causing that trigger.
Yeah. Ask that why, and get what old narrative or thought that you've treated as truth that's actually not true is causing that response in you, and redefine that narrative according to what's actually true. Yeah. All right. We said this when we started. We're way past the hour I planned on, but thank you so much. This was so much and more that I hoped for from this conversation. You all brought your knowledge, your insights, your vibrancy, your authenticity, your vulnerability, your truth to this conversation. And I hope to have many more like this, because I feel like this is, like Isabella said earlier, this is just the tip of the iceberg. And so if you're listening to this right now, ladies and guys, this is for everybody. This is how we learn and break down barriers. All these wonderful wise women's resources are in our show notes here on the YouTube page. Just look down there. There's the links. Comment, share this with other people. Get these conversations going. Let's take the stigmas off of and misinformation and misunderstanding and old tired narratives around conversations around period health, what's possible, and our anatomy in that whole area in general. Let's be informed. And there's resources, whether, no matter where you are in your journey, to access here. And these ladies have tons of them for you to meet you in all the different spaces you are in your life. And Amy, I was like, we've got to get going what you've got going on here everywhere, like that meeting those young girls and giving them safe places to ask questions and be really well informed. But if you didn't get that, or you aren't getting that, Valencia and Isabella are here to get you on track. I really love how we kind of met everybody where they are in this conversation today. Whether you're a middle school girl, you need to get your body realigned, and then you need to understand your cycle fully. We've covered all the avenues here today.
Doesn't this remind you of the hero's journey? You got the one part. Here's how to take care of the pain. Okay, second part, how do you bring it into your daily life, your community, your partners? Okay, and then the third part, how do you bring it to the world? We got Amy here, right? So we got all these parts. I just thought that was the most brilliant thing. We all really fit into this, and Melissa, it's all thanks to you.
Yes.
Well, I kind of accidentally on purpose did this. Like, I didn't fully understand the way you guys all met those different criteria until we all started talking. But I was smart enough to know that you all had something really important to say. And that has been so true. So thank you all for this important conversation today on Together We Feel, as we are getting real about periods and taking down these and creating new, healthy, truthful narratives that everyone needs to be involved in and educated on. So thank you to Amy Orr, Valencia Saint-Louis, and Isabella Thor. I could talk to you all day, but we won't do that. But people, again, look on our show notes here in YouTube to how you can follow these ladies. And again, many of their resources are also available on our resources page on our website, because Valencia and Isabella have also been with us on our podcast and radio show last year, and Amy's coming soon. So plenty of places and spaces to find and follow these women and their resources. Thank you all for your time today. Take good care of yourselves. Be curious about your bodies this week. Instead of seeing your body as being against you, see it as being for you. Get curious about those clues and know there's resources for you today. Take care and have a great week.